Loyalty was supposed to be a virtue, but for me it became a cage made of guilt and expectation. I spent years believing that love meant sacrifice, that being the reliable one was a badge of honor. It took losing everything I thought was family to realize I had been paying for my own captivity. Last winter, my parents called a family dinner that felt more like a financial negotiation. They told me to cover my sister's wedding, all $275,000 of it, and they wanted it within 30 days. When I hesitated, they accused me of forgetting my place, of turning my back on the people who raised me. I sat there quiet, feeling the weight of a truth I hadn't yet spoken. Because what they didn't know was that the house they lived in, the house my father bragged about to his friends, already belonged to me. I owned their home, their pride, and the proof of their betrayal. That night, I stopped being their provider and started being their reckoning. When I first started working in Manhattan, I thought success would finally earn me respect. My first job as an analyst paid $95,000 a year, and I was proud of every dollar. The $15,000 signing bonus felt like a trophy, but before I could even deposit it, my mother asked me to fund my sister's trip to Europe. She called it an investment in family. I told myself it was fine. I was young, ambitious, and wanted to be seen as generous. Helping felt good, at least at first. Over time, the requests became routine. When Ashley needed tuition for graduate school, I paid. When her boutique failed, I covered the losses. When my parents wanted to upgrade their Manhattan apartment, I transferred another $40,000. Every decision was disguised as love. Every transaction chipped away at my sense of worth. 8 years later, the total was over $400,000, not counting the quiet resentment that came with it. I worked 16-hour days while they called me obsessed with money. My parents bragged about Ashley's creativity at dinner parties, introducing me as the one who works with numbers. I learned to smile through the exhaustion. I learned to stay quiet because arguing felt cruel. Still, late at night, I started asking questions that scared me. When did helping become the price of belonging? When did loyalty turn into silence? I began to see that every act of generosity had been a test of control. The more I gave, the more they demanded. By the time I realized I had become their provider, not their daughter, it was too late to unsee it. Kindness without boundaries wasn't love. It was a surrender disguised as duty. The dinner table looked like something out of a magazine: polished oak, crystal glasses, soft jazz humming through hidden speakers. My parents always liked their home in Westchester to feel like success could be staged. But that night, the air was tight, the kind that makes you careful with every breath. My father sat at the head of the table, notes in front of him like a board presentation. My mother had that smile she used when pretending we were all one happy family. Across from me, Ashley scrolled through her phone, glowing with self-importance. My father began outlining the plan for her wedding as if reading from a business proposal. The rainbow room, 350 guests, flowers flown in weekly from Ecuador. The gown alone cost $45,000. The total came to $275,000, due in 30 days. My mother called it a family contribution. Ashley called it the least I could do after being so distant. Every word was a calculation, every smile a transaction. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch when my mother's tone turned sharp, or when my father said, "Family supports family." I simply watched them, the performance of morality covering years of entitlement. The room's candlelight caught the silver watch on my wrist, and in that reflection, I saw something shift. I realized I felt nothing but clarity. As the meal ended, I reached for my phone under the table and typed a single message to my lawyer. "Pull everything from the Parker estate. Tonight." The email arrived just past midnight. Flagged urgent from Marcus, my attorney. I sat alone in my apartment, city lights flickering through the glass, the kind of silence that makes every heartbeat sound like a clock. The subject line read, "Parker Estate Documentation." I opened it, expecting another set of excuses or delays. What I found instead pulled the ground out from under me. Attached was a scanned deed dated December 15, 2016. Property value $4.2 million. Buyer, Madison Parker. Seller, Robert Parker. For a long moment, I thought it was a clerical error. Then I saw the bank transfer records. My own account, drained by $180,000 for the initial down payment, the rest routed through a line of transfers labeled family investments. My father had sold me their home 8 years ago to pay off $3.8 million in gambling debts. The documents were meticulous, notarized, filed with the county, all perfectly legal. Every year since, $32,000 in property taxes had been pulled from my account under automatic deductions labeled estate management. I had been paying the bills, believing I was supporting them, never realizing I was maintaining an asset I already owned. I scrolled through the files slowly, watching each number confirm the same truth. My generosity had been rewritten as liability, my trust turned into collateral. It was like staring at a mirror that finally reflected what everyone else had known all along. I wasn't their safety net. I was their cover story. The emotions that came weren't loud. No shouting, no tears, just stillness, the kind that comes when anger has burned too long to feel like fire anymore. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, realizing I had spent years paying rent for my own humiliation. The next morning, I met Marcus in his office overlooking Park Avenue. The city felt cleaner from that height, like distance could turn chaos into order. We spread the documents across a glass table, the deed, the tax records, the unpaid rent calculations, $4.2 million in property value, $384,000 in back rent, 8 years of deductions from my account. It was not just proof, it was a financial anatomy of betrayal. Marcus spoke like an auditor, precise and calm, laying out the structure of exposure. Later that week, I met James Morrison, my mentor, at a private club near Bryant Park. He had been a partner at Goldman before retiring into quiet influence. When I told him what I planned to do, he didn't flinch. He listened, thoughtful, before reminding me that silence could be a strategy. Never let outrage lead. Let truth do the work. His words settled in me like stone. We built the portfolio as if preparing for a merger presentation. Clean graphs, notarized evidence, timelines, property appraisals, and a formal eviction notice. Every file was cross-checked twice. The gala would host 400 of Westchester's most powerful donors, with $2 million in expected pledges, and a live stream audience in the thousands. My father would stand at that podium to preach family values to people who worshipped the image. In the quiet before the storm, I reviewed each page again, not to savor the power, but to respect the process. This was not revenge. Revenge is emotional. Justice is deliberate. I wasn't planning to destroy a man. I was preparing to remove the mask he built. When the truth finally came out, it would speak for itself, and for the first time, I would not need to defend it. The Plaza Hotel glowed like a cathedral built for wealth. Chandeliers shimmered above the grand ballroom, scattering light across a sea of tuxedos and silk gowns. Waiters moved like choreography, balancing trays of champagne, while a string quartet played near the marble staircase. My father stood near the stage, shaking hands with donors and local politicians, his laughter warm and practiced. Every detail of the event spoke of power, of image, of control. The foundation's banner hung behind the podium. Family values, generational wealth. The irony was thick enough to touch. I sat at the table reserved for the Parker family, directly beneath the cameras. The foundation's live stream had already drawn more than 9,000 viewers, and the number climbed with every toast. My mother smiled for photographers, her diamonds catching every flash. Ashley twirled the stem of her glass, whispering about her wedding plans to anyone who would listen. Across the table, my father's colleagues praised his leadership, calling him a pillar of moral stewardship. I listened in silence, the portrait of a dutiful daughter, my face calm, my mind sharp. When the lights dimmed, the announcer introduced my father. Applause rolled through the ballroom as he stepped to the microphone. He began with his usual charm, speaking about the importance of giving, of families who lift one another, of daughters who honor their parents through generosity. The audience nodded, moved by his sincerity. He told them the Parker family was a testament to unity, that true wealth was measured not in dollars, but in legacy. He smiled in my direction when he said it. I watched the reflection of his face on the silver cutlery, the way his expression hardened for half a second when he looked at me. He knew how to sell virtue like a product, packaging deceit in philanthropy. Behind him, the live stream view count hit 12,000. I took a sip of champagne, feeling nothing but focus. The music swelled as he announced that Ashley's wedding would be the event of the season, hosted and funded by the Parker family. The room broke into applause, guests clapping for an illusion. My mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin. Ashley waved like royalty. For a moment, I let myself study the stage, the lights, the faces, the performance of decency. I thought about the years I had spent trying to earn their respect, the money that had bought their silence, the house that stood as both symbol and secret. The cameras turned toward our table, capturing the smile I offered back to him. It wasn't affection. It was permission, the calm before disclosure. He believed he owned the narrative, that appearances could still protect him. But I had learned from the markets that illusions always collapse under truth, and tonight the valuation of our family's reputation was about to crash. When my father finished his speech, the applause echoed like an orchestra of illusion. The host thanked him for his inspiring words, then announced that I would deliver a few remarks on leadership and legacy. My father's smile froze for a fraction of a second, but the cameras were already on me. I rose from my seat, smoothing my jacket, the leather portfolio in hand. The ballroom lights softened as I walked toward the stage. The hush that followed was polite, unaware. I took my place behind the microphone and thanked the audience for celebrating generosity and family values. Then I opened the portfolio. The first document appeared on the projection screen, the property deed from the Westchester County office. I told them that 8 years ago I had signed what I believed were estate planning papers. In reality, it was a property transfer. The house my parents lived in, valued at $4.2 million, was legally mine. My name filled the line-marked owner. The room shifted from interest to disbelief. A murmur spread like static. I scrolled through the next document, the bank records tracing the funds from my account to my father's, payments that cleared gambling debts totaling $3.8 million. Each figure glowed under the ballroom lights like evidence under interrogation. I explained the yearly property taxes, $32,000 deducted automatically from my account, and the total rent they had never paid, $384,000 in unpaid occupancy. I paused long enough for the silence to grow heavy. My father's face was pale now, my mother's hand frozen on her wine glass. I said that I did not share this to humiliate anyone but to demonstrate that accountability begins at home. Real family values mean respect, not exploitation. Wealth without honesty is corruption dressed in charity. At that cue, Marcus stepped forward from the back of the room. His dark suit caught the light as he crossed the marble floor and placed an envelope on my father's table. The sound of it landing was louder than the orchestra. 30 days to vacate the property. The words were quiet but absolute. The live stream camera caught everything. 20,000 people watched as my father sat motionless, his public reputation folding into silence. I ended the presentation with calm certainty. Family is not ownership. Support cannot come from deception. What you build on lies eventually collapses, no matter how beautiful the facade. I thanked the audience for their time and stepped away from the microphone. The applause never came. Only whispers, the click of phones, the flash of cameras documenting the fall of a man who built his virtue on borrowed money. The foundation's banner still hung behind the stage. Family values, generational wealth. It felt like the last joke of the night. The world of charity around us wasn't built on compassion. It was built on lies, and the truth had finally turned on the lights. By morning, the headlines had already spread across every local paper. Charity chairman exposed at gala. Daughter reveals 8 years of fraud. The foundation board held an emergency meeting before sunrise and suspended my father's chairmanship pending a full audit. By noon, 3 board members had resigned, and the Westchester Tribune published the full set of documents from the live stream. The IRS announced a review of my father's unreported property transfer and undisclosed income. His name disappeared from the foundation's website within 48 hours. Ashley's world unraveled faster. The Rainbow Room canceled the wedding and kept the deposits under the fraud clause. Her fiancé returned the ring quietly, escorted by his parents, who no longer answered my mother's calls. My mother stopped leaving the house, her circle of friends shrinking to none. The people who once lined up to toast the Parkers now looked away in grocery aisles. It wasn't hatred, it was avoidance, the kind reserved for a scandal that exposes what others fear in themselves. I stayed silent through it all. There was no celebration, no satisfaction. It felt less like victory and more like balance being restored. Justice had its own rhythm, indifferent but precise. I instructed Marcus to close the eviction file and waive the $384,000 in unpaid rent. Some debts are better left as lessons. Mercy, when chosen freely, becomes the final act of power. That was enough. The rest belonged to time. In the months that followed, the house became quiet again. The rooms, once filled with arguments and pretensions, now echoed with the sound of hammers and new beginnings. I oversaw every detail of the renovation, not to erase the past, but to rebuild it on truth. Money could repair walls, replace floors, and polish marble, but it could not restore respect. That had to be earned through silence, boundaries, and the choice not to hate. I turned the estate into a learning center for young professionals struggling with financial manipulation. We taught them how to protect what they worked for and how to say no without apology. The irony was that the place that once used to drain me now gave others strength. I learned that forgiveness is not about excusing betrayal. It is about freeing yourself from the obligation to carry it. When I walked through the finished house, sunlight cutting across the new hardwood floors, it felt lighter. The air no longer smelled like fear. I thought about my family, their faces, their stories, the years lost to illusion. I didn't lose them. I only lost the illusion that we had ever been whole. The truth was what remained, clean and quiet. If you've ever been told that love means giving until it hurts, I hope my story reminds you that love without respect isn't love at all. It's dependence disguised as virtue. I spent years confusing generosity with loyalty, believing that self-sacrifice made me worthy. But I learned that the moment you let guilt decide your boundaries, you stop living your own life. Real care is not measured by how much you give, but by how honestly you can stand your ground. If you're watching this and struggling to say no to someone who keeps taking, know this. Protecting your peace is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's how you reclaim the parts of yourself that no one else has the right to own. Dignity is the quiet form of love that never asks for repayment. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that message. Leave a comment if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about honor, resilience, and truth. Your strength begins where guilt ends.